Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Webinar is now streaming live on
Whoa,
YouTube.
whoa, I'm nervous.
Oh yeah, baby.
I'm so nervous.
Maybe
Here
I
we
should
go.
verify that's actually true.
No,
So
I see it on my end. It's like
You see it showed
YouTube
up?
with a little like Wi-Fi signal going like, yeah, we're on YouTube. YouTube.
All right. I'll just trust it, I guess.
Yeah,
attention all meat
I
suits.
got it. I saw it. Okay.
yeah.
All right. Let's go. All right. I'm excited to have a chat with you guys again. And sorry it's been so long. And I feel like inevitably we end up talking about some of the deepest subjects of metaphysics and spirituality without having that much of an agenda. But for our starting point on this discussion, I thought it'd be great fun to talk about the subject of synchronicity and miracles, because it seems like the more I learn, the more I appreciate that these two concepts are either the same thing or at least very, very linked along the nature of the laws of manifestation in our reality. And we could actually just start with a high level overview. It's like, why do things even happen around us? Why are things unfolding at all? And there's the physics theories that and of course physics theories break down once you go really tiny into quantum physics, and it's like, oops, metaphysics seems to be interrelated with quantum physics, but it's hard for physicists even to pin down what that relationship has to be based on the very bizarre language that different quantum physicists may be using to try to justify what would appear to be randomness or probability in the unfolding of the universe. And you really can't get around either meaning based on metaphysics or apparent randomness that has no meaning as being more foundational to why things unfold. Um, I was thinking one example we could say, we know that the sun is the source of the heating of the seasons. And we know that as it gets colder, because the Earth is on a different side of the sun, we're going to have some differences. And this is not caused by everyone collectively agreeing, I think I need it to be cold outside because I'm just attracting that energy of coldness in my life right now. We don't usually talk about seasons that way. We try to kind of have some trust that there's some degree of order and structuring to the hierarchy of the lessons that we're being placed in, that we're being dumped in a colder room in wintertime to all go through the cold lesson a little bit more. And for that part of the world, we can easily just move, I suppose. But um, at this point in time, at least, it seems that the wind is pushing around air in a random pattern. So you don't really know if it's going to be hot or cold on a day like today. Uh, and the weather people can't ever get it right. So there's a certain randomness there. And of course, people have speculations about the degree to which the weather is caused by the thoughts of the people in the region that are experiencing that weather. And sometimes if you look at the weather map, you'll notice there's conspicuous lines of cloud formations around where there's populated areas. If you pay enough attention, I think that's something that can almost be analyzed statistically. I think people should be trying that more. Um, but anyway, I'm talking about right now why do things happen? What percentage of this is physically related, and what percentage of this is metaphysically or spiritually connected? Why things are unfolding?
I think it's kind of layered, like kind of like a fractal layer almost, right? So, as in the sun and the seasons and all of that, there is some kind of consensus on a deeper level because our solar system is kind of like a living being almost, kind of like what they're talking in the law of one. It's kind of like a being, and then those beings in that system have a consensus of how things could be. But then it fractals down to like say uh, the world, to each country, to each town, to each city, to each person. Like I remember when I was in Sedona, they had some like gnarly atmospheric cloud phenomenon that seemed to be man-made, YouTube friendly, seemed to be man-made, right? And I just took up my drum, which is right there. That drum right there, I took that out and I went right to like I was on a mountain. I was like, bump, 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 like going crazy, like using my, like all my will. And I'm telling you, it was like thick, like pea soup out there. It was gnarly. And I was able to break a piece of the cloud like that. But I was using all my will. Like it wasn't like a confidence. It was more like a please get out of here.
So how do
So
you know if that's a synchronicity or if that's a miracle?
I believe they're probably connected because synchronicities and miracles usually go hand in hand.
Well, let me go one level deeper here. How do you know if that
Yeah.
was you or that was God?
It was both of us because if it's true that we're all one, regardless, it just being as clear of a channel as possible for what the law of one would call the one infinite creator to be expressed through you, you know, like
Yeah.
that, it would seem logical in that respect. But at that point, me, kind of the ego, was not comfortable with what was being done to the atmosphere. And then I used my will, and then part of the infinite creator was like, okay, I'll give you a little cookie. Go ahead. Here you go.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one
It's
I
Go
would
ahead.
say too is like so the let's just say the existence, just the sheer fact that we exist, right? Is that a synchronicity in that, you know, the sun existed and the planet formed and all this happened and we're like a mold that just came into being because the conditions were right in synchronicity? Or are we, our existence, is that a miracle in that we were created by some divine power such as God, right? Or is there even really a difference? Could they both be true, right? Could all this exist in synchronicity because God made it happen? You know, all these things exist, like, you know, the wild animal that sits for 6 hours waiting for prey, and then synchronicity, you know, comes along and there it is. Is it the fact that it sat there for 6 hours, the you know, what made it happen, or is it a miracle, you know, that it just happened? And I think there's probably a thin line between the difference, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about synchronicities now. Do you guys have any great examples of what you would call synchronicities that happen in your life?
Tons.
Or maybe we could define synchronicity as seemingly coincidences that are just too statistically improbable to be seen as uh, coincidences or seemingly too miraculous to be seen as randomness.
Mhm. Yeah, like when you're sleeping and you have a dream and you forget about it. And then a day or two later, all of a sudden something happens. You're like, oh my gosh, I had a dream about this.
Right.
Right? Is that synchronicity? Or was that some kind of a manifestation? Or was that like a prediction? Or if you wouldn't have had the dream, would that thing not have happened?
Yeah. In the case of dreams, it's almost like you're viewing from a different vantage point where you're not even looking at physical reality, you're looking at the metaphysical laws, I think, more directly in a symbolic fashion. So it does seem like when you're in the dream plane, you're more connected with that, the heart of what synchronicity even would mean in terms of metaphysical laws. That's my theory on it, at least.
I'd like to kind of think of synchronicity is like um, breadcrumbs, like small breadcrumbs to large breadcrumbs, for example. So say a really small synchronicity would be like, ooh, I see 11 and 11 on my clock, right? Or I see 2:22 or whatever, right? You follow that, you pick up that breadcrumb, you eat it, and then you go to the next one, right? And then that's more like, okay, I feel like I'm like I have to go to this place. And then when you get to that place, you meet some people. And then that leads to another breadcrumb or another breadcrumb. If you follow the synchronicities, then it opens up wider, much wider, and then you have access to much more synchronicity, which I feel is most likely our natural state. Like it's natural to be synchronistic. It's natural to be a saint. It's natural to be holy. It's natural to be all these things. It's natural. right? So
You're
it
saying
feels
you're saying by recognizing these things on the clock or these little moments, you're saying by acknowledging it and being open to it, you're paving the way to being closer to those things, like a saint or channeling. You have to be open to that possibility in order for it to come into your life more.
yeah, and it like that, although it's not like I give any significant importance to 11:11 on my clock. It's just, oh, neat. And then, oh, something up. Oh, a lane opened on the highway. Oh, yeah. Oh, the gas is cheap at this gas station. Wow. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. And then it keeps on going, as in things just open up. And I remember because I was setting up my studio for the last 2 days, and I was listening to our old uh, streams on Ascension Works. I listened to all three of our conversations. It took me that long to figure things out. So I was like, yeah, I might as well listen to the guys and see what it was like and blah 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 blah. And I remember Randy mentioned that it was kind of like, do you go with the flow or do you go against the grain? Like going with the flow upstream type of thing, right? And I find that a very apt example. Is like synchronicity is just kind of like going with the flow of the stream.
And I feel one important other aspect to this is not identifying overly that I'm the one who has the special number or something. And then
Mhm.
and it's like I think it's the same way with miracles too. And I think this is also connected to why the Bible records and the Law of One books record that Jesus was saying, tell no one when there would be a magical positive working. And the admonition, make sure you're not telling people about this, sort of protects the the magic, the miracle. It protects it from other people's skepticism and disbelief, being a form of infringement of their free will, and it protects it from you going down a path where you're seeing yourself in a way that is throwing you off your spiritual course because you're filled with pride or narcissism or something.
Mhm.
So, um, uh, I guess we could go down that path of the nature of the miracles more too. And but I definitely agree with this concept, and I've noticed it myself that and it I, I guess I could share that it certainly happened to me when I was a child, and I didn't have anyone to talk to about it. When I first got a digital watch, I went around door to door selling stuff uh, in order to get a little digital watch that had the minutes and the seconds showing as numbers so that I could see. And there was a particular number, I'm not going to share what it is yet, but a particular number that's following me my whole life. And I saw the minute and the second line up. I would just glance down randomly. It'd be the same minute, same second. Every hour I'd check. I just kept seeing it over and over. And I'm like, that is really weird. And it started to become more of a religious thing for me before I knew anyone, talking about that. That is a phenomenon that many people experience, but eventually it followed me throughout my life, and it was sort of like a guide on different in different ways. And I've noticed that there are some synchronicities more than others. For example, the tones in the ear. When I get a tone in the right ear, this is what the Law of One books talk about too. It seems to be a positive signal that if you're, and it seems to happen when I'm questioning, like, am I on the right track or not? And if I get a signal in my right ear, then I usually will interpret that as yes, I'm on the right track to be of service to others. And if it's a signal in my left ear, I often will interpret that as maybe that's not the right path for. But it's hard to know what to associate the tones when you receive tones, what to associate with, and it's hard to know what to associate the numbers with because you could become completely paranoid and be like, oh no. And many people are on this trip now of there are negative synchronicities and there are negative entities who are causing the synchronicity. And this is like there's like paranoid tunnels that people get in once they believe in synchronicities and they go down a paranoid tunnel. And you can really still make of it anything you want. It's still like a free will situation with anything that's happening. And even gosh, we had one person who he's passed on, but he was very paranoid about a very large fireball that we saw at one of our CE5 events, and it just made him crazy paranoid. And I'd never seen that happen before with anybody. This person had his own lessons, which I had to work through, and it's like a mutual karmic connection that we had to work on, I think, with but I don't even necessarily know what to make of that particular event in the sky. It's odd that one thing would cause fear when so many other things that happen to everyone would be more inspirational.
Mm.
But there's still great freedom in this process, I think, and that I think that's part of the interplay of why we're allowed to get more and more when we're using it constructively as opposed to destructively in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that I think could be helpful, which I find very helpful, anything that happens in my life situation, I'm like, that's exactly what needed to happen.
Like
100%.
when someone
Yeah.
says, "What are the chances of that happening after something happens?" It's like, well, apparently it's 100% because it just happened, right? It's like,
Yeah.
speaking of synchronicity, is it a synchronicity that we see that is it the Fibonacci pattern in the way seashells develop, in the way plants like unfold and spiral in a time lapse, or the way a heart develops in the womb in that spiral kind of is that I mean, what is that? Is that a synchronicity with the way the Earth is spinning and revolving around the sun? Is that what creates that pattern in so many different things on Earth?
Well, Mike brought up physics earlier, and it seems like that's probably kind of like the idea of like a toroidal structure going both ways. You know, like you have a torus look. Everybody knows kind of like what a torus looks like, right? It's like a sink emptying, but both ways.
Mhm.
So it seems like it's coming out. And I mentioned Nassim Haramein, the physicist. He says that every atom inside an atom is a mini black hole. So it kind of makes sense that a lot of things would have that toroidal structure to construct
The polarity,
stuff like the
positive and negative
Fibonacci.
polarity,
Yeah.
like the yin and yang kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you
And I
think,
feel like
Chris?
that's important too. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, so I just have a question because I'm probably the least I think out of all four of us, I've thought about synchronicity and miracles the least. That's what I would say. I could be wrong. I don't know. But my question is, so the phenomenon of synchronicities is one thing, right? We all experience things that seem like synchronicity. But my question is the meaning behind what happens. Like, how do we know what the meaning is? Like, okay, I saw 5 red Volkswagen Beetles today. Like, what does that mean? Or that's a bad example, but so I think that's my question is like the meaning. Like, you can observe things, you can perceive things, but what does it mean, and how do you know that you are taking the meaning correctly?
Right.
Or is it just a human condition to assume there is a meaning?
Or is it a human choice to attach a meaning?
That's what I mean. Exactly. I don't know.
Well, let's say I see something out my window and I see something 5 times today, and I feel like, oh, I need to go murder somebody. Like, we can all say that, okay, me going to murder somebody, that's not a good thing. Like, that's not good. So I probably mistook the meaning of those sightings the
Yeah.
wrong way.
But
Mhm.
it's fascinating. It's the exact same thing with dream symbolism and the fact that people can actually develop a relationship with certain symbols and dreams might cause those symbols to show up more often in their dreams. And then and so an interesting example of this is there's a book by a woman named Mary Summer Rain, uh, like a dream encyclopedia, dream dictionary, and you can start looking at the things that were in your dream and look and compare it, say what the book thinks that these things in the dream may symbolize. And it almost seems as though the weirdest symbols can pop into your dreams once you have that book in your possession and you're
Mm.
wanting to go use it.
Mm.
This is a phenomenon I've seen multiple people have this experience where once they have some reference point, then the symbols in their dreams start following those patterns more and more. And so
Mhm.
there's like a fractal nature to the symbolic expression. As soon as you start putting meaning on it, then the meaning is more useful as like a tool. And I honestly, I feel like all of our reality is like a dream full of symbols that can be used as a tool if we're open to it. And all of our relationships have different symbolic geometric patterns to them, where one person will have one energy, another person in your life will have the exact opposite energy. And it's up to you to recognize that there's a geometry there because these are two sides of the same spectrum of consciousness that you're learning to work through. And really that often is speaking of the nature of balance and the nature of forgiveness. You could forgive this person because you see this issue in another person or and the opposite in yourself, and you can see how this is just you're just two parts of the same coin, two sides of the same spectrum of the creator manifesting in some way.
That would suggest that at all times, all things are synchronistic, and it's just our observing of the little glimpse of it is really just the fact that we're taking the time to observe that. And that's why I think when people do these drugs like DMT and they start to see things break down into fractals, it's like you're just seeing what exists all the time and in a wealth of abundance around you at all times. In other words, there are miracles and synchronicities happening at all times all around us, kind of like in every room. Like we're all sitting in different parts of the world in different rooms, yet we're all surrounded by frequencies and vibrations and tons of different things that we can't perceive them, but they're always there in every room. Just like, for example, if you wanted to take a sampling of the space of the air in the room right now, you are surrounded by how many frequencies of radio stations. You can't perceive them, but if you have that correct transistor to pull it out of the air and translate it, all of a sudden this other realm exists of music and art, and it's all around you. You just can't perceive it like a radio station, right? It's like until you have that ability to grasp and recognize or to observe, you really have no idea. It's happening all the time, I think. The fact that our bodies, right, are made up of billions of things bursting and dying and happening all with just within us. That's, I mean, all in a synchronistic way, right? Is that a miracle? I would say, yeah. But by a human standard, we can't just, we're trying to be able to create that synthetically, a life or a robot or artificial intelligence. As humans, we're trying to create that ourselves, as if we're little g gods, but it's very complicated. And yet here it is existing within us. Is
Yeah.
that just a synchronicity, or is that a miracle, or is it?
What if
Yeah.
there already is a fictitious synchronicity working already? Because you brought up radio signals and
Mhm.
you have the mainstream media and you have different types of influential messaging all over the planet. So, what if our current reality is already being commandeered synchronicity in a way that people have to agree for this reality to actually take place?
So, in
Because
other
you,
words, humanity is responsible for the unfolding of our own reality.
well, there are people who want to broadcast their perspectives, and then they have a larger microphone or platform to be able to do that, and it reaches the most amount of people. And don't forget, everybody's got like 9 to 5 jobs, kids. This is there's not much soul searching a person can really do in this current construct of reality. But you have these messages out there, and we align with that messaging. So we're not we're using our free will in a very lazy way by by attaching ourselves or allowing those messaging systems to attach themselves to us, which
Mhm.
in turn commandeers our synchronistic path. Because like Ra was saying, we're a social memory complex. So imagine we're all kind of like humanity is kind of like this school of fish
Hmm.
And then you have like the the most prevalent messaging commandeering us, right? So
We
now it's
still,
yeah, go ahead.
it's, yeah, that's, I think this gets to the more to the heart of the metaphysical laws that are governing our reality and the way in which we are collectively choosing versus individually choosing the the experiences. And if you think about it, like we really do have a choice of what, if we even want to turn on a television or turn on a device. And but as soon as you make that choice to turn on the television and the device, now you are hooked in to a much larger spectrum of symbolism where for example, the politics or a war, for example, if everyone is looking at a device saying, we are at war, or our country is at war, or some terrible thing is happening, it's very compelling, but you still have this free will to turn around, turn away from the device and look at the world around you and say, this is a world at war, or this is a world at peace. I see the trees, I see the birds, I see the gentleness all around me. This does not feel like war at all. Somebody walks by with a gun, you could say, this person really likes that toy they're playing with over there. You have total free will always, but it is very compelling to but then again, why are we manifesting the person with a gun walking by if we could have been out adventuring in some other direction in that particular day? Um, it does seem like there's still an individual connectedness to all of it.
Well, that's the key to almost everything is free will implications involved in everything. Like I've had this thought, okay, many Christian religions, including my own, when they say when a person goes to hell, they go to hell for eternity, right? And then you ask, okay, but if we're truly in a free will universe and say that that hellscape is actually like a real thing for whomever, I believe it's more based on belief in that respect. You create that sentence, right? But but if that person is is like in agony, crying out for help in a hellish place, and I want to change, isn't there a free will implication if you say no, it can't, it's eternity? Who's saying you can't? Who's saying you can't get through hell and start to ascend to something greater, right? Because once you say you're in hell for eternity, you're using an absolute, saying, who said that? Okay, there's a lot of people who said that, but but and so that's if somebody has a free will, is it free will except for
Hmm.
the situation,
Does free will
right?
cease to exist if you get it, if
Yeah.
you find yourself in hell?
Yeah. And I completely believe there are realms that are hell and heaven and everything in between. But I don't subscribe to the idea of like, oh, it's eternity in one particular state or vibration, right? Like to me, it's removing that ability of having true free will, right?
Let's let me break this down into a simple example that seems related to me is like, let's say a person has been feeling like they're in hell because they have a back pain or something. And this is what Randy was talking about with the complexity of the body. And you could say that the back pain is there as a teacher, and the back pain is showing you you need to slow down, or you need to um, not feel as burdened. There could be metaphysical layers to this that are hard to appreciate for people, but inevitably that back pain is trying to uh, well, if it is trying to teach you something, is it any less of a miracle than the healing that would bring about the lessening of the back pain? Because once the source of the distortion of the back pain is identified, now you have more balance in your life. So the miracle can be seen as that which is bringing you into balance by being a guardrail, saying you don't want to continue going down that path, which felt like hell. And you could say the miracle is the release from it, but you still are going to pick another direction. You figure out if that direction is in balance or not. Um,
Well,
So,
do you want to hear something, a question I'll ask that might really cook your noodle? And it's like, this is way down the rabbit hole.
all right.
Where is eternity? Where is eternity? Where?
Where is space?
Everywhere.
Yeah, okay. So now this gets into the health thing. That person with the back pain, right? That person with the back pain is now in eternity. If eternity is now and it's everywhere and it's space, they're in eternity. This moment is eternal. That back pain in this moment is eternal suffering in that back pain. And it is a hell and it's eternal, right? So you can have your cake and eat it too with this for Christian people and whatever. Because this moment right now is completely full. It's real. It's complete. It's whole. It's whatever. We can, it's self-evident that now is happening. So if now is happening, and in just a few seconds ago, that now has quote unquote passed, but that now has got to be full, right? So it's like a picture frame of the whole film strip of reality. And in that picture frame, which is always that back pain, right? You're still in eternal hell in that back pain. But now the now has changed its formation. You don't have back pain anymore. And now you're potentially in heaven, right?
And I do wonder how much pain is caused by a desire to believe in the ego that is the one who is in pain, and how much pain is caused by on some level an enjoyment of the view of the identity that is stuck in that situation, as opposed to releasing it and saying, I'm no longer tied to this particular hell experience, and I can go within and I can find a new reality that has none of the attachments to any of this current reality.
Well, I think there's language issues with it too, because the languages are kind of like casting spells. That's why there's a famous meme out there saying that's why it's called spelling, right? So when people say in general, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, right? I'm not hungry. I feel hungry. I'm not thirsty. I feel thirsty because I'm hungry is not my identity. I feel hungry is actually a more accurate way of saying it, that I feel hungry, right? Because
Hmm.
I'm not hungry.
Well, like
That
little
yeah.
kid, I'd say, "Hey, Dad, can you make me a sandwich?" And he'd say, "Poof, you're a sandwich." It's like you're
Yeah.
not making me a sandwich; you're making a sandwich for me, right?
Yeah, yeah. That's great. I like that. Can I use that?
Sure.
Uh,
And are we at war? Are we at war, or are we perceiving that there is belief in conflict, um, that is seemingly continuing around us? It feels like this is an endless source of identification when we start to look at it differently. That just everything is just attachment to an apparent reality that is pretty well consistent when we wake up every morning. Of course, when we dream, it's not consistent at all. It
Well,
could just be.
it's interesting that we're talking about this, and it makes me think about how primitive spoken language truly is. And it's like words don't exist to describe all the things yet, and we've kind of just accepted this language. And as we proceed on with the decades, language seems to be getting less and less evolved instead of the other way around, where we should be getting more and more communicative, and we're getting less and less with emotes and lazy brains and all these things. Because just even when you look at science, right? And I had a discussion the other day about this: is science the ultimate thing, or is science humanity's attempt to translate and understand God's creation? Right. And it's like, I think science is always trying to evolve, and it's always changing. And, oh, we now know this and we now know that. But yet the truth always existed. We're just attempting to discover and decipher this truth that already exists. Right. And it's like we live in this complex world with these complex bodies and these spirits and souls that we really have no idea about. And science it likes to parade around like it's this ultimate authority. But really, given that we're just still developing our language and our understanding of this reality and this world and this chaos of these lives, we don't know too much, really. I mean, we know a fraction for sure, but yet whether we know it or not, it all exists, right? The world spins, nature exists, and animals hunt instinctively, and bees are born knowing how to forage for pollen and create honey in these honeycombs. And how is it that bees all across the world all develop and create these honeycombs in these shapes? And there's more going on than like just communicating with language, right? I mean, bees communicate through vibration and temperature, and but all of this exists. Whether or not we can recognize it and decode it and decipher it, it all exists. So are we really the masters here of this reality, or are we just, kind of along for the ride, you know?
I think it's both. And plus, if science, true science, as in like the scientific process, truly is taking place, it's right out of what Jesus said. Science to me is seek and you will find.
Mhm.
That's what true science to me is. It's like you're looking for it, it seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free. That's another one. Like when you find something, like for example, like free energy. It's a perfect example. If you find that, and that's the truth about energy, and then you release it, what happens? It's free. We're free in that respect, right?
It's like
So the
static electricity, or
Yeah. So the
there's
teachers
all
are,
around us.
yeah, so our teachers, our spiritual teachers from the, antiquity, different faiths, religions and stuff, they all had basically the same type of guidelines or guidance or suggestions or what's it called? Uh what's that thing when you tell some like commands, commandments to look, there you go. It's pointing in a particular direction.
So I'm debating how far we should get into some more esoteric discussions now, such as the working with our reality more intentionally, which is potentially what could be called a metaphysical or spiritual science or a magical science. And I was just having a discussion with my wife yesterday about how funny it is. I don't know if there's been any studies done on like different religious groups who pray over their food. It's like, are they healthy? Is their food suddenly way healthier because they looked
Yes.
at it differently?
Yes, this is actually a thing, and I don't forget, I was talking about this last week. Is that when you there was a thing where a bunch of people sat around and passed around a bottle of water. I think, were we talking about this?
Oh, the
And
Emoto experiments.
yeah, and they were saying positive affirmations to the bottle of water.
Yeah.
And there has been studies where they molecularly, on the molecular level, when you exert positive affirmation to things like water, or your food and stuff like that, the idea like praying over food, you are changing something in a more positive way if you're giving positive affirmations. And it works the other way too. It's like if you're being negative and giving negative affirmations, it does distort and make it more of an unhealthy, water molecule. Or so the idea of like praying and being grateful for your food and all that is like it suggests that your intention and maybe even the sound you're creating actually does physically alter this universe on a molecular way, So it's like group prayer. Like when a whole community gets together and prays for a person's healing, there have been many records where the person can heal, and it's like you don't even have to be in the room. It's like quantum entanglement. Like you can once you're focused on something, an object or a person, and you truly do focus and send your frequency, your vibration, or your wavelength to that thing or that person without even being in the room or in the same country, you can instantly send and affect the matter of that person or that thing. That suggests we do not live in the world the average person thinks.
I've actually seen that a lot on social media when big big accounts say,
Mhm.
"Oh my God, I'm feeling something," or "My friend is feeling ill," or whatever, hospital, this and that, and then the next day they're like, "Oh my gosh, thank you for all the prayers. It worked."
Mhm.
Definitely, I agree.
Moving the blocks in the pyramids. For all we know, it could have been 30 people standing in a circle around the blocks and emitting this sound or this frequency or this loving spirit or who knows what. I mean, the fact that we're just now being able to talk about these things as if we're first discovering them for the first time, we're not even calculating in something that, there might be a way to, use a piece of technology to amplify these things, you know,
Right.
whether it's a pyramid shape or a wand, like, Hollywood. Just the term Hollywood is derived from the idea that the holly tree has properties that amplify spells, and your intentions, and using these tools of this world are it's like hidden knowledge, that we're just starting to re-tap into. I feel like this is a lost thing that was known once, and maybe the libraries of Alexandria or deep in the Vatican, there are instructions on this. I don't know, but
So I think there's multiple layers to this discussion that we could talk about with um, I'm really fascinated by the fact that if you take somebody like Uri Geller, for example, who was doing was it spoon bending,
Yeah.
various things like that seem to be psychic phenomenon, and psychic phenomenon is another interesting example that may interrelate with this, where it seemed as though he was gaining credibility and maybe lost some when he went on like a public show and there was a bunch of skeptics around him. And I think he might have said, like, it just doesn't work in this environment. And I've seen that repeated in many other cases where when you get a room of skeptics together, uh, then whatever this kind of thing is that was at one point predictable, it's no longer a predictable uh, thing because it would be an infringement on the free will of those around to have that happen. And well, that's my interpretation of why it doesn't work as well. And I think that this is true all the way to uh, the miracles of Jesus telling people to tell no one. And there was an example that came to mind when I finally finished watching maybe the third season of The Chosen show, where they show the breaking of the bread and fishes. And I noticed, and one of the things it's a great show to poke fun at and see how you disagree with how they interpret what the Bible says. But and all four of the Gospels, they tell the story of how Jesus, found out that everyone needed to be fed. They only had a limited amount of food. And the first thing he said is, now make everyone sit down, sit down. And as soon as right before he broke the bread and did miraculous multiplication of the bread, he made sure everyone was sitting down. And my theory, this is the same thing that's in the Miracle of Love book about Neem Karoli Baba, where he would break bread under his blanket. You wouldn't see what he's doing. If no one else is seeing what's happening, then then their free will is not at all infringed upon as they're walking up to take a piece of bread. They just know that there's bread available. They don't know how it came into being.
Mm.
And I have to wonder to what degree our whole society is so full of pride and bragging about every last thing, that it's difficult for us to live miraculous lives when we're automatically trying to bring it out into the public and make it a spectacle for our God or for our way of doing things, for our way of manifesting reality. We can create courses and teachings around our way of manifesting reality. But ultimately, I think that there's a there there's a magic that the universe wants to show us about, that is the one that's the most open-hearted and honoring the perspectives of everyone else around us, and the one that can honor the free will and perspectives and interoperate with other people without being about me, without it being more of the divine flow that's coming through everyone and every situation without there being any identity to it. That seems to be the raw power of the creator coming through all manifestation for these miraculous occurrences, which are not limited in any way. And I suppose, you know, it's really only a limited on our perspective as to what we see as a miracle in that sense.
Mhm.
Well, I believe if the environment around us clears, like there's a clarity with certain things and certain illusions or falsehoods fall away. And then there's a general feeling of goodness. Just, yeah, just like that nice summer or spring day or whatever. Everybody, it just feels really nice. The clouds are nice and puffy, the birds are singing type of feeling. Just that. I think people would be much more open to seeing somebody levitating across the the sky, right?
Right. So yeah,
Uh,
you're saying like if there wasn't so much feedback and noise in the the minds of the people because of the world we're projected that we live in, if we
yeah,
were just existed in this world without all the nonsense, what we might be capable of.
including our physical structures, because a lot of our physical structures are created with metal and concrete. Concrete is not so bad, but metal has weird reverberating properties, especially in the shape of a box. Like imagine things vibrating off of that, and how it can stunt certain toroidal shaped natural inclinations that we all have, right? And so like if this is why a lot of people, including spiritual teachers, leaders and stuff, that like, hey, go in nature. And when you go out in nature, you feel suddenly like, yeah,
There's no right angles in nature.
yeah, or left angles. Sorry, I have no. No, but that's the environment needs to have some type of uh, coherence. And I believe it is happening because of the current things that are happening on a planet right now. I really feel all this stuff, like good, bad, everything in between, is like purging, like taking your puke bucket out and just bleh, letting it out. Like the earth is puking in its puke bucket right now.
It's
And
like
and
every day
yeah.
there's more feedback, more nonsense, more distraction, more, theater unfolding. Hey, look this, focus on this, look at this, focus on this. It's like, well, everyone just shut up.
Yeah, but would you rather that stuff stay inside, or would you rather want it to express itself and come out and fully express everything it needed to express? Because that consciousness is like this traumatized child that needs to scream at their parents and let everything out.
Yeah, I
And
guess you're right
so
because
yeah,
let it
yeah,
all out, right? And then it's up
yeah.
to us. We can tune it out, like you know, turn it off.
But even if I tune it
Go out in
out,
nature.
am I removing my attention from it in a compassionate way? Like as in like I had this crazy thought. again, going back to the religious thing about like hell and whatever, right? I was like, and so there's this idea of like, like people go to heaven, people go to hell. I'm like, I would not want to leave this reality or any uh, fractal of reality or level of reality unless everybody's with me, unless everybody's there. If there's somebody down on a ditch in a hellish zone, I wouldn't want to progress until that person progresses.
Hmm.
I
That's
wouldn't want to.
generous of you.
But I
I would
wouldn't
get the
no,
hell out of here as quick as I could.
no, because if I did, right, then uh, I don't know, I'd just feel very I wouldn't feel complete.
Hmm.
And this
Unfinished
is
mission.
Yeah, and this is where it feels like the idea of this social memory complex idea, it's that the whole planet is together. One person could speak for all. Doesn't matter who. You could pick whatever person on that planet, they could speak for everyone. So it's kind of like that dude in the ditch. It doesn't feel complete. I'd rather humanity complete
Yeah.
together
And
and
it
move
is
on.
a giant mess to get tangled in, but it almost feels like we are being pushed and pushed into the tangle more, even if we try to step back from it. Everything's so interconnected and integrated. It's hard to just go live in a cabin in the woods all alone and have everything you need, because it is so much easier to go to a Walmart and be integrated with all the products that they have that do everything you need. And if it gets to a point where we can't as easily do commerce because things start collapsing as a society, we'll have to work together even more on a more deep level to start rebuilding the bonds of communities that would that have been broken by the system monopolizing and controlling every little facet of our reality. But so there's advantage, I think, either way, um, as long as we have to deal with other people and break through the blockages to being able to have ways to collaborate, work together to make our reality at least as good as it is and improving consistently, which people are generally trying to do. They're trying to have an easier life, but then they turn on the TV and it's like, oops, now we have all these other things to worry about. We have to figure out who to vote for, and we have our parents, and it's affecting everyone. This election, I'm so happy and excited that we're being pushed to break through into love for each other, which does not care about all the political junk. But but people are so attached to so many different facets of what's it's really like just it's like a tiny portion of our reality are the issues that are being debated in the left versus right spectrum. It's just those issues happen to be the most divisive and most almost like where you have belief systems which are mutually exclusive. And so therefore you just can't wrap your head around the other person's belief system if you're totally on one side or the other. Uh, but of course, you can find a way to open your heart if you fully take in both sides. And I sure wish it was legal to vote as both a Democrat and a Republican. That would be so much fun to me that we would have those kinds of discussions all happening in both political parties.
Or if we
Um,
could just vote on the issues ourselves.
yeah, yeah, true. Issue-based voting would be fun too. But that's not what this is about. This is about the people more, or learning to love each other, I guess.
Yeah, and I would like to see the world come together more too. It's not, yeah, I mean, of course, like every country's citizens should be their country first, right? Like in China, if you're from China and you're Chinese, you should be China first, right? You should be concerned about your family and your those closest to you. But I feel like on average, every country, the general population of that country would get along with the general population of every other country, right? So, oh, we're going to war with Russia. Why? The majority of Americans would probably get along with the majority of Russians. We all just want to be comfortable, love our families, eat good food, and be healthy. I mean, why do we all, it's not the citizenry that necessarily has beef with each other. It's the governments that need to fight, So why don't we just take the leaders and make them, either get rid of them or put them in a ring and let them fight. I mean, I just don't think that the average person in any country is generally a bad person, right? I think that we're all pretty much the same everywhere. We're just a different seasoning, we're different flavored people, but you know, they just want to live their life, be left alone, love their family, enjoy some, good food and relax. And, it's like, it's not that complicated. It's like
Well,
all these issues of this or that or this, like polarizing things to keep us divided. Let's just we need to talk more. Like Chinese people need to talk more with Russian people, and with both of those need to talk to American people, Australian people. Like we need to have some kind of way where we can all talk together, right? Like when I open up Twitter X, I don't see Chinese people, right? I see all the American people. Well, we have digital ability to translate one another. Why aren't we interfacing more with each other? Is this by design? Is this just I
well,
mean,
one thing's for sure though, as opposed to like 50 or even 100 years ago, people can communicate with each other like never before.
right. It's like we're
Never.
right there, right?
Huge.
Like that, and that's why I think like the
Yeah.
whole idea of like a one world or a new world order is like projected as this horrible thing, but it's like, would it be? It could be great, right? But it's who dictates what that order will be is really, is it going to be those globalists, media manipulators who want to crash economies and stuff? If they lead this world order, it's not going to be good, right? But if someone who's loving and compassionate like Jesus or Gandhi or whoever, if someone like that's in charge of dictating this world order, it might be awesome, you
I
know?
think the one world order thing is a counter psychological operation because that would be ideal is to have like a whole world in unity.
Mhm.
But if you're like the quote unquote bad guys or somebody who wants to have hold of the narrative, you'd be like, ooh, that's evil.
Mhm.
And we got these groups, these shadowy groups that are taking over. And then all of a sudden you have this resistance to say no to a world order type of thing, right?
Mhm.
But in a sense, we have so much evidence that there are these shadowy groups.
Of
Huge,
course.
right?
Yeah, it's
But then we're like, okay, we now we know what kind of world order we don't want.
right.
Now we can
Oh,
see what kind of
Schwab's,
world
right?
order we do want.
And certainly decentralized order is helpful if we could live like Native Americans and just have simple agreements and not need to be have anything in our life dictated by somebody living thousands of miles away. That would be more ideal,
Yeah,
I
like
think.
that's important to point out, right? Is like the Native Americans, they had a lot that was right, right? Don't get it twisted though. Native Americans were killing each other and robbing each other and doing all that too, right? They weren't like they weren't a perfect example of humanity, but that being said, there was a lot of good things that they were, supposedly did, right? It was their balance with nature and not taking more than they needed from the environment, and that's what you got to like mine the gold out of every culture, every civilization, every religion. It's like nobody's got it 100% right, but everyone's got some good things about their culture and their ways, right? And it's like we could just pull all the best parts of everything and create a new system just based on truth, love, compassion, and doing the right thing and honesty and all these good things, and we can pull, like the Muslim religion, there's some good things in there, right? But then there's some really bad things, okay? It's like we need some kind of a council of really smart, compassionate, right-minded people to sit there and really dissect every culture and put together like like the coexist sticker. It's like there could be some really cool things that we could do as a species. Not
Here,
a country or as a globe. I'm talking like as one world. Like if we all came together, truly came together with compassion and truth, and there's more than enough food, there's more than enough space. You know what I mean?
And
There's more than enough oil. We just gotta
and
stop letting the wieners rule everything.
and even just being able to come together with people who can believe and miracles. We could just miraculously change our reality when we have enough faith and focus that we're not wanting to see the hellscape that we've been seemingly seeing for so long.
But there's this one little thing though, like a little issue that can pop up. Now, if I come together with somebody and say, let's create something new, right? As in like a system, right?
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden you get like a repeat of like what's happened in the past about the system because there's a hierarchical structure,
Yeah.
right? So what I feel is probably the best course is you empower the people with tools that allow them to be self-governing, self-reliant. And then the system creates itself through cooperation with people. Like, for example, very simple. If everybody has the ability on their own to have food, water, shelter, clothing, a relevant education, right? And an unlimited amount of energy that you'd never have to pay for, right?
Mhm.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's just removed from a system or a bunch of systems, right? Now we all have, we're in a good spot. We don't have to worry about those things anymore. Now, imagine everybody on the planet, every family had that. We get there are projects that pop up. Like say I'm like, "Oh, I want to build this thing. I need these types of people with these types of skills and anybody want to help?" And then I would get people from wherever, Australia, China, Zimbabwe, coming to that location because obviously we have free energy, so we can fly anywhere as fast as we want and whatever. No worry about like any type of fuel, right? We go to that location and we start building and we have a blast enjoying the whole process of because I'm like, okay, I have this idea, but then somebody else there is like, oh, you know what? This design that you had here, I think this would work better. And we're like, oh yeah, that would work better. And then all of a sudden you create this beautiful thing, like kind of synchronistically.
Mhm.
Like synchronicity comes into the creative process without you saying this is the definite design that we need. This is the template of the design that I want, but then we create together this
So
thing
you're,
that is even
I guess,
better than what I thought.
what the only thing that's really lacking from that system is the platform to broadcast your desires and needs to the world. But we're pretty much there. I mean,
Well, we have the
And
internet, but then this would be like like a way better version of like say the internet without any ads and
be like a giant,
commercials and
really
stuff.
good Craigslist kind of thing.
Better.
it's a ch- it's a big subject maybe for another discussion. But I feel like there's also the subject of the integration between spiritual progress and technological progress that has to happen because as soon as you have something that can be turned into a weapon, people will do that. Even in primitive times, Native Americans were still warring with each other and couldn't really find a way to have total peace, even with very limited technology. They were using what technology they did have in waging war because of the human condition, because of the plague on the spiritual side of our collective, which is there's just some sort of collective uh,
Fear.
rot that hasn't been broken through. But I want to go to Chris also, if you have any thoughts on these particular subjects before we go back into maybe closing it out with some discussion of the metaphysics of the miracle that we're seeking.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I had some thoughts on the miracle topic too, but yeah, I mean the new world order and all this stuff. This is a great discussion. I love it. I talk about it pretty much every day because I do a show about Bitcoin and I'm also big into Nostr, which by the way, Nostr is the solution that you're thinking of, a decentralized social media that can't be controlled by anyone and it's already there. It's called Nostr. And yeah, I mean, there's so much that can be done. I think it's just that human nature always comes in. Like I often, whenever there's discussion about creating the perfect world, or you know, a utopian vision and stuff, I always um I don't believe it. I don't buy it, because this is human nature has both the light side and the dark side. And you could give 100, you could give the world everything that you guys just talked about, unlimited everything. Everybody has everything. No one has a reason to even be negative for a moment. And guess what? The world's going to descend into a hellhole because there's going to be a bunch of a-holes doing all that stuff. That's just human nature. And why, in my opinion, why is that human nature? Or not necessarily why, but in essence, the only reason we're born into a human body is to overcome that negative human nature. We're not angels yet. We're humans. We're flawed. We're dark. We kill each other. We have egos bloated beyond belief. And the reason the world punishes us and hurts us is because our ego's too big. It's like the universe putting us in our place. And so as long as there's ego, there's going to be a nastiness around the globe. And, of course, at the same time, there will be all the good things too. That always comes with it too. So the utopian stuff is, I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it.
Well, one other thing I want to point out is that to me, it seems a lot like the Plato's allegory of the cave, where you have people focused on dark images all the time, and they just haven't seen the light yet. And so if you're always focused on, well, I need to get ahead as much as possible, and it doesn't matter how great technology is or how great my life is, I'm not going to interpret this as time to be loving and optimistic and hopeful, because I just need to focus on what I've known and in these dark shadows of my reality. But I feel like this is ultimately like we're here to find all the people who are mulling in darkness and find some way to show them a little bit more light, to crack their eyes open to the idea that there is a better way. And it's like an ongoing process, and people are just so wanting the world the way it is that they just have to be broken out of it gradually, piece by piece, person by person. I think if you can help one person in your life, that's enough. If you can bring one person in your life to a greater state of peace and joy and love, and you can enjoy that with them, then that is progress. Just one person at a time is what needs to happen at a minimum, I think. So
Well, here's
But
one
Chris
thing
is
too
right,
that
though.
I noticed as well, because with Chris's comments, which I agree, there's dark and light, but to be creative, you need contrast. If you're going to paint a painting, you need to put the shadows in there. You need to have that contrast, right? And a utopian world that where people think is utopia there's like no contrast. But in a truly creative and evolving world, there'll always be contrast, but there'll be the balance of contrast. Because just being like dark, light and dark together, in of itself, both of those aren't really evil. It's the proclivity towards one or the other, right? That it can go to an extreme. And then you get caught into that extreme of that because it's out of balance. So as we create, as we evolve in a place which I feel is way better than a utopia, is that creative contrast. And part of it is because it's so balanced, it doesn't mean you're going to go all the way to the dark. You just take a little taste of it, right? Like you get like an ice cream cone, right? Vanilla ice cream. You dip it in chocolate. Then you put a little cinnamon on top of there. And then you take a little cayenne and you put it on top of the cinnamon because cinnamon and cayenne have a spice together, right? The perfect amount. That's going to taste amazing. But if you put too much of anything, If it's too much cayenne, it's gonna be, oh man, what kind of crap are you feeding me? If you just put the right amount, you need contrast to create. You need the dark and the light in order to have some type of reality like we have,
Yeah.
right?
I think we were
Yeah.
talking about kind of wasn't like a utopia as much as it was like everyone deserves the right to their basic, like you said, food, shelter, water, clothing, whatever, is like a minimum level of accepted, survival for everyone. And then, the sky's the limit. If you want to participate and you want to build things and you want to try out welding or, something like that, the door should be more open. Like there should be, access for everyone. Whereas right now we're in a like kind of an exclusive thing where it's like only when you have this or you pay this much can you experience this thing, you know?
It's an incentive-based reality.
Hmm.
The incentives that we have currently in place
Hmm.
incentivize us to be thieves
So
and
do you think that the
incentivize.
social credit score thing would be better?
No, that's another type of incentive. They're incentivizing you to try to be a certain way. They're trying to mold you into something. The incentives gotta change. I have this really, I don't know if this is like the best analogy, but it kind of makes sense with an incentive. So you're driving down the road, right? It's 40 miles an hour, but then you go 55, the cop pulls you over, gives you a ticket.
Mhm.
But switching the incentive would be kind of, this is the best I can come up with now, is if you stay at the speed limit, they'll actually pay you. Here's 40 bucks, right? Like it will go into your bank account or whatever. But if you go over, that's fine. But the only way you'll get what's it called? The only way you'll get any consequences is if actually you physically harm somebody with your reckless driving, not because you went over the speed limit.
Like the
So
law of no
you're allowed to go as fast as you want as long as you
just
don't
can't
harm
hurt
anyone,
anybody. Right.
right? But if you go the speed limit, you'll get points or money,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a positive incentive. Most
Mm-hmm.
of our incentives now are negative, and
Right.
it turns people into negatively oriented beings. But if
Mhm.
you switch it, you can switch it to people who are positively oriented,
Yeah.
but
Encourage
you still
behavior.
have your contrast. You
Yeah.
still have your cayenne and chocolate vanilla ice cream. You still
One
have
thing
it.
I want to bring up one point before we start to close this out here. Um, I in the Law of One books they talk about the fact that um, second density beings, the animals, many of them they don't have to worry about shelter, staying warm, or finding food because they're in a reality where it's just automatically provided by nature. You can look out how much the trees are producing. The trees will produce things that humans have trouble digesting, and animals will have enough fur that they don't need to worry about having shelter. But they said specifically that the loss of as we evolved into, well, I mean, I should say, as this particular physical form evolved out of second density forms like the apes who had all this hair, the loss of hair was intended to weaken us specifically for the purpose of forcing us to deal with one another. And because we can't do it all alone, we simply are needing one another to help us reach our basic needs. And the fact, this is the spice, the fact that we have to deal with one another, whatever it is our interactions turn out to be, is like it's providing a platform for the miracles of love and healing and progress and growth to continue to accelerate. And
Mhm.
so whatever's happening, it's an acceleration, I think, for everyone to look at their lessons in a new lens to deal with others with love. Hopefully, is what the lesson is that people are able to learn faster. Um, and in that sense, all the madness that's happening is still could be seen as synchronicity and miracles to bring us closer to the perfect point in our awareness of what is needed to break through the blockages of our society and of our individual energetic self to find the love and the light that propels us onward.
So you're kind of saying that maybe tragedy could also be a miracle,
Yeah.
and that it ultimately leads us to fruition that would somehow benefit us individually or as a group.
Right.
It's
And it seems like,
arguable that tragedy is the only thing that can bring us back to where we should be.
yeah.
Interesting.
All
I
right.
dig it. I dig
All
it.
right. We got a few people we can chat with once we end the recording, and the attendees. We thank you for joining us. And any other things you want to close with before we end the recording?
If you want my recipe, just go back about 10 minutes and just clip that out. It's you can also put
Cayenne,
you can also
cinnamon,
put
chocolate.
yeah, you can also put cacao and cayenne and cinnamon, perfect amount in your coffee.
Well, we're going to have a coffee and ice cream meetup soon, no?
Yeah.
I'm down.
Count me in.
I just would like to say that my wife and I have an organization. It was named Pause Your Life for many years. We just switched the name now. It's called Lightness Meditation. We have local meetups in Colorado Springs, and we also do two live streams, two meditation live streams each week. So it's lightnessmeditation.org. And but anyway, the name change is what I really wanted to alert people to.
Beautiful. Yeah. And I'll send that link out to people. And it's a beautiful thing just to sit together and meditate.
I was thinking maybe our next show we could do a silent 1 hour and a half meditation.
That is Chris's show. Just hop on
No
Chris's live
talking.
stream.
But it's not that long though. That's a little lengthy there, right there.
No, I think it will be fine.
What about
People will
this?
ascend
We
and
could-
everything.
We could do
No
we could
problem.
do a 30 seconds of positive affirmation to try
Yeah.
to actually alter our own molecules towards one another.
I am
By the way,
amazing. I
can I just
feel
point out how
You are.
when I first brought up the name Mike in the meat suits, everybody just was like, "Oh my God, that's crazy." But now everybody loves it.
I don't think it's crazy. It's funny. You know what I mean? Because we are, right? We're meat suits that just happen to have souls, right?
All right.
This has been great. Thank you,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you, so-called